After weeks of outrage and condemnation over their actions, 8 VIP protection members will be appearing in court today. Now, to remind you, they're accused after being seen in a video that went viral. They were kicking and slapping motorists on a highway here in Johannesburg. Now, these men were among Deputy President Paul Mashatile's Blue Light Brigade. It's essentially his security. He was not in the car at the time, we understand. Let's find out what's expected. Reporter Heidi Giokos out at the Randburg Magistrates Court for us this morning. Hello to you, Heidi. And I think a lot of people are waiting to see exactly who these men are and what their arguments in court are going to be. But this is a first appearance. I imagine this is going to be for charges being laid and bail.
Yes, certainly. So I think it's going to be obviously read into the record in terms of the charges that these 8 VIP protection unit members are facing. We do know that they were arrested yesterday and processed at the Sandton police station. So they basically spent the night in the Sandton police station cells. We do know that according to IPID, they had indicated that all 8 of the members should report to the police station. We do know that yesterday afternoon 7 arrived, and then the 8th one also arrived, but a little later on. We do know that the charges range from pointing a firearm as well as malicious damage to property, being the vehicle, and also assault. I think there just needs to be some clarity in terms of if it's just assault or assault for GBH, which is obviously very different to just assault. We do know that they were basically caught on camera assaulting civilians and motorists. I think there's also a lot of concern around whether or not the Deputy President Paul Mashatile was indeed in that vehicle, Gareth. And the reason why that is so significant and important is because those VIP protection members are meant to protect the President or the Deputy President. That is their job and their mandate. But if the Deputy President was not in the vehicle, why did they behave in that way? And did it necessarily warrant for such kind of assault? That, of course, is obviously going to be clarified in court today, and we do know that they will be appearing here at the Randburg Magistrate Court. Whether or not they will be applying for bail, we'll obviously have to wait and see when court does commence.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit later this morning as well, because I think what the country is waiting to find out, Heidi, you're quite right, is what actually led up to this incident even taking place. Whether or not the Deputy President was in the car or not, what reason could they have had to behave the way they did? We don't know whether or not the victims involved in this are going to be at the court. Are they going to be appearing at any stage? What have you been hearing? Because obviously there hasn't been much talk about them. They're trying to remain anonymous and private.
Yes, I mean, eNCA has reached out to the victims, but we do understand that because they are SANDF trainees, they are training to be part of the South African National Defence Force. They've actually been instructed, Gareth, to not engage with the media, as it's understood that SANDF will be handling all kind of communication in terms of the victims in all of this. What's interesting is that yesterday when we spoke to IPID, we had asked IPID if they had been investigating or rather engaging with the victims, and they did indicate that the victims gave an intention to lay charges against these 8 VIP protection members, and this is why IPID then had to proceed with its investigation and proceed with the laying of these 3 charges against all 8 members. I would presume and expect the victims to be in court today, given the fact that it is the first appearance, but it is a very sensitive topic in terms of the victims might feeling that they will be further victimized in all of this, or perhaps targeted. You can just see from the force that was used in that video that was taken, and bless the soul that actually had the courage to take such a video, because there's also a concern that this happens very often, but it's never captured on camera, and in this instance it was captured on camera. We do know that there is a lot of force that is used by the Blue Light Brigade, and in this particular instance there was serious assault that was seen on that video. So we are hoping to possibly see the victims in court, but time will only tell. I do know that court will probably start at around 9 or 10 o'clock, and we'll obviously get clarity if the victims will be here and whether or not the 8 suspects will be applying for bail.
And just very briefly, Heidi, as you say, court starting just a little bit later this morning, probably just after we go off air here on the South African morning. Any idea about cameras being allowed inside? I know that's always quite an application process, but viewers will be curious. Do you know offhand?
Yes, I'm very nervous about that, Gareth, because I do think that there's going to be pushback. But we will obviously, of course, make an application. I'm going to be heading into court now to try and see whether or not we do have access and if we need to make a formal application in terms of whether or not we will have access. But an interesting point is that yesterday, when we were at the Sandton police station, we were not allowed inside the police station when all suspects were being processed. And we managed to get a glimpse, but they had all been covering their faces. So I think that is telling of what we will most likely expect today in courts.
Yeah, it's one of the most commonly asked questions on at eNCA on Twitter whenever we're covering a court case, Heidi, is are we going to be allowed cameras inside court? I thought that's why I'll just ask you. Thanks for clarifying. So you can hear it's actually a bit of an application process. You can't just have Heidi and our team walking in there with cameras. I'm sure most of you would know that, but in case you're wondering, it's why we can sometimes, why we can't sometimes take a camera into court. But Heidi is on her way to go make that application. Of course, if we can, we will have that live position inside the courtroom. Heidi Giokos on that story for us throughout this morning.